team spirit, confidence, respecting one another as a team. We would say many, many times, respect each other, respect this field, respect the umpires, respect for the game. And most of the boys got that. Most of the boys understood that. It's up to the coaches to make sure that message, gets across, not once, not twice, but an entire season. So I think for me, those life lessons and listen, some of those life lessons are, the thrill of the win, the agony of defeat, right?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Clearing the Bases, the podcast where we step up to the plate and dive deep into the world of youth baseball. I'm your host, Jimmy Filangieri. On this show, we discuss all things related to the preparation and development of youth baseball players, coaches, and yes, even parents. So sit back, settle in, and get ready to hear from some of the greatest baseball minds out there.
The travel organizations, they were few and far between. There really weren't many of them at all. And by the time I had 4 sons go through Little League, those travel organizations are absolutely everywhere. And listen, I'll raise my hand and say, there's no question that I got involved, with travel. And it's funny, if you had asked me before I got started, like, you want me to drive my son a half hour away to some indoor, you're out of your mind. Well, I ended up doing that. The Grind up in Orange, Connecticut, who, Mike Morris is a wonderful guy and it's a great organization. And I did that. And, you scratch your head, but again, you want to do right by your child and try to get them to improve. But, some parents take it a little too far.
To be able to reach the highest levels of this game, you got to work hard. You got to get in the cages. You got to do your strength and conditioning. You got to throw your bullpens. There's all of this physical stuff that you need to do, and you need to work hard at it. But don't forget that you also have to get better at the mental side of the game. And one of the ways you can do that is increase baseball IQ by downloading and using the 6-Tool app.
For baseball coaches like you, every game brings measurable progress. However, game time isn't the time for trial and error learning. Instead, have a proactive approach. Use 6-Tool, the best baseball player development tool on the market. We provide a platform to level up your coaching strategy by helping you to quickly identify and address your players' knowledge of the game. By using our easy-to-implement interactive player quizzes, you can assess position-specific issues, overall baseball IQ, and much more. Win more games and develop better overall baseball players with effective off-the-field training. Visit us at 6-tool.com. 6-Tool. Get ahead in the game.
Okay, everybody. So, we took a little break from the show for like the last 4 weeks. Sometimes life gets in the way and, new coaching position, new podcast starting, just so many things going on, winter training. So I apologize for the little break, but we're back and we're going to hit it strong. So in a time, when youth baseball feels faster, louder, and we'll call it more of a business than ever, what does it really mean to build something that lasts? So we're going to find out, because tonight we sit down with Matt McGuire, longtime coach, board member, and president of the Fairfield American Little League in Fairfield, Connecticut. Matt's journey inspired him to author the book, Fairfield American, A Legacy of Little League Dreams. For 15 years, Matt helped shape not just teams, but a community. His book captures the history, heart, and generational impact of a Little League program that has meant so much to so many families. So, if you care about the future of youth baseball, which everybody out there knows I do, and the legacy we're leaving for the next generation, let's raise the standard and let's get into it. How you doing tonight, Matt?
I'm great. Thanks for the intro. I really appreciate that.
Oh, not a problem. I mean, I appreciate you reaching out and, wanting to come on and share your story because I think it's an important one. Again, anybody that listens to this show knows how I feel about it. Community-based baseball, Little League is so important. It breaks my heart to see what's happened to it. And whenever I run across somebody that understands what the purpose is and how it should be, then I want to talk to that person.
Sure, sure. I agree.
So let's jump into it. Let's jump into the book real quick. Well, no, let's back up a little bit. Give me your history. How did it all start? When did it start? And how did you climb the ladder to get to the president of the league?
Sure, sure. So I kind of speak about it in the beginning of the book. Like so many parents, fathers in particular, because certainly more dads than moms, although there were moms involved with the league as I was at the time. You get involved for all the right reasons, as I say in the book, because you love the game and you want your children to experience the same joy that you had as a child, and you want to pass that down. So really, that's where it really stems from. And many people have told me, the book reads like a love letter to Little League, and I really appreciate that type of feedback because that's truly what it is. And so, you get involved because you love the game and you want your children to experience it, and you go to the monthly meetings, that the league has to learn how the whole thing runs. You sign up to assist, to coach, to get involved and learn how it's all done, and just enjoy the ride as you go about doing it. So that's kind of the origin for sure. Just because it comes from a place of complete joy and history growing up with it yourself.
So, I mean, I mean, did it happen by, your kids starting to play and you said, you know what, I want to get involved?
Yeah, it's funny. I smile when I say that because I don't think my kids had a choice, right? They were going to play, right? So you start way back in T-ball, and back then that was kind of the ground floor. Nowadays they have things called like future stars and starting at even an earlier age. But back then, just signing your kids up for, and it wasn't just baseball at the time. We had them play soccer, we had them play basketball, get them involved as in many sports as possible. Baseball was primary for me because it's truly my first love of sports for sure. But that's how it begins. You just sign them up, and for me, very fortunate in the sense that four sons, so it really kept me involved for 15 years.
So, all right. So let's jump to the book. What, what inspired you?
Yep.
What made you write the book?
Yeah. So, like I said, 15 years of experiences and the majority of them good, and a couple thoughts on that. Like I said, four sons, I coached a ton of teams. And I think part of the reason why I wrote the book was looking back, I realized how fortunate I was to be around a league during a period of winning. And from 2010 to 2017, Fairfield American Little League went to the Little League World Series three times. Didn't win, but still. And those years in between, either won districts, won states, got up to the regional up in Bristol and got very, very close to going back. So for me, in looking back, it was not only the joy of coaching all of my sons, but my God, how fortunate I felt to be a part of something that truly was unique. So, I decided to, I was done in 2018. 2018 was my last year as president of the league. I took some time to think about it for a few years for sure. But the very first thing I decided to do was, think about an intro, think about a layout of the book, and the chapters of the book are basically the years of my involvement and how that involvement changed over the years. But really, after having kind of a foundation of what I wanted to do, I started interviewing guys. I started interviewing the coaches and presidents during the period of time that I was involved. And I have to tell you, I knew a lot of those stories, but it was great to be able to grab a cup of coffee with a friend who, we were now removed, right, X amount of years from the league to reminisce on some of the fondest times of our lives with our kids and frankly other kids as well. But part of it also is the challenges, right? Of running a league and, dealing with coaches that are a little unruly and dealing with parents and the expectations of the success of Fairfield American. Once we made it to Little League World Series in 2010, the pressure that those summer teams, those district teams felt, right? That year after, I'll just put it this way. There were a couple guys that just frankly didn't really want to talk about it, because it wasn't a great experience for them. And I sympathize with that. So, I had my difficulties with running my district team and with the 11-year-old group. I ran into situations with parents where I decided to do, one thing my way and they didn't agree. And frankly, they didn't want me to coach, that team moving forward. But 14 years of pure joy, a year of, ups and downs and difficulties with parents, it was still the joy of my life, for sure.
Well, one of the things you learn about coaching, and you better learn about coaching real quick, is that whenever, you have a decision to make, like you just said that, you did certain things, some people weren't happy about it, and other people might have been happy about it, okay? But as a coach, I've learned a long time ago that you make a decision, you stick with it, and you go with it, because you're never going to please everybody.
That's right.
It's just not going to happen. Sometimes you're going to look like a hero. Sometimes you're going to look like a fool. That's just the way it is, and you have to go. So I applaud you for going with your heart and doing what you believed was right.
Yeah, and again, especially in having those coffee conversations with guys that I coached with and presidents, sure, did we speak a lot about the success of the league? Sure, we did. But the number of anecdotes that are littered throughout this book about those smaller moments, in a regular Little League game, where it's not about, advancing in the playoffs or, advancing in districts and getting to the World Series. It was just a moment with the child. And, again, I'll give you an example of a couple. One of the coaches shared with me how, a 12-year-old boy, so it's his last year of Little League, actually the fall, going into that season of his 12th year, approached his coach before a game. And it was a fall baseball game, so, the records don't even matter. It's more practice than anything else. But the boy approached the coach, who's a good friend of mine, and said, "Hey, coach, can I pitch, for the team?" And the coach said to him, like, "Well, have you pitched before?" And the boy said, "No, because, my other coaches never allowed me to pitch." And so my buddy, Whoosh, as we call him, Eric Wachowski, said, "You're pitching today." And the end of that story. He pitched well, he smiled, and I'm sure he carried that with him the rest of the day, let alone the year. Not only the coach, but the player as well. And there are moments throughout the book like that mean the world to me because truly, that's what it's all about. Just teaching these kids how to play the game the right way, but also really trying to, have fun doing it.
Yeah, it's funny because I have a story very, very similar to what you just said. I had a kid, again, this is going back probably about 15 years ago. I had a 13U travel team and, kid was trying out, big lefty, okay? So I went over to him and I said, do you ever pitch? So he says, no. So I said, why? He says, well, my Little League coaches never let me pitch. They never let me do much of anything. So I threw him a ball. So I said, throw some pitches. So he did. So I said, all right. Took him on the team, worked with him, and he wound up pitching for WestCon. Okay. So
that's amazing.
You just have to give them a chance. I love this that, we talk about it all the time, that people will pigeonhole kids at 10, 11, 12 years. Well, that's my shortstop. Well, you know what? Let's give them some reps at first base, second base, third. Let's give them reps everywhere. Let's give the right fielder reps at shortstop. Let's let them throw. They're kids. Let's develop. You don't know what they're going to develop into. They all develop at different rates. So give them all a shot.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about volunteers, because a big part of any little league is volunteers.
Yep.
And without them, you're not going to do well. So talk to me, volunteers, what role do they play?
Yeah, so, and it's funny, part of the story here, and I know you and I have spoken about this a little bit, how much has changed with the number of signups, the number of children playing Little League, and how those numbers have come down over the years. When I first got started, so 2010, 2011, 2012, in that period of time, when my involvement started to grow, I had a coach at when I was named a AAA, manager. After the monthly meeting, one of the board members came up to me and said, "Hey, congrats! That's a pretty big deal." In other words, it was harder back then to get a spot
Yeah.
to run a team because, frankly, there was so much involvement, which was a wonderful thing in regards to the volunteers. But over time, it's become more difficult. But in regards to being a volunteer of the league early on, you become a coach, and then kind of the next rite of passage, if you want to kind of move up the ladder, is you kind of become a commissioner of a division, right? So now you're running multiple teams and listening to the board for direction and how to run that division, and doing it as we call the Fairfield American way. In other words, what have we done historically? Let's do that, but let's also try to improve on it and make it better, kind of a thing. And then funny story on that, after my involvement as a manager of multiple levels, AAA and majors and things of that nature, when I decided, I said, well, I want to throw my hat in the ring to be a board member. I put this in the book because it's kind of funny when it happened. One of the guys that was retiring from the board, his role was the field coordinator. Right. So you're basically dealing with, once you get all the registrations in the database and trying to figure out how many teams do we have per division. And you're talking back in the day where we had 900 plus kids or around that number. And then you got to deal with, all right, how many fields do we have? And when are those games going to run? And all this other stuff. So I knew the guy who was handling it was retiring. So I got voted onto the board that year. And when the president started to discuss with the new board, okay, we need to divvy up responsibilities, blah, blah, blah. And some of the old guys were still in the room. I rose my hand and I said, I'd be field coordinator. It's like a pin dropped. People are starting to, ooh, and I'm like, are you out of your mind? Like taking on that responsibility kind of. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Right.
And it was difficult. It was really, because you got to deal with rainouts, and then you got to deal with coaches who email you, say, yeah, that schedule doesn't work for me. I'm like, sorry, buddy, that's the schedule. So I'm sorry, I'm dancing around your question, but when it comes to the volunteers, in speaking on behalf of Fairfield American, I say many times in the book, there are a handful of guys, more, than most, who get it, who understand. And in other words, we're not getting paid to do this job. But we want to do it not only the Fairfield American way, but also obviously the right way, and build on it and improve on it, kind of a thing. So you need those volunteers. And I was lucky enough to be surrounded, for the most part, not only a board, that was quite good, but we did our best as a board to educate coaches in those monthly meetings to say, hey, guys, zero tolerance for X, Y, and Z. Here's how we do things. If you have issues, you need to raise your hand, let us know, all those kinds of things. And I think by the time I was done with registration numbers coming down, you're not getting applauded or a slap on the back for getting a manager's position at AAA. It's kind of like, can we get someone to do it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you got guys who work in Manhattan, which, no fault on their own. It's difficult to make a 5:30 afternoon game, a weekday afternoon game. And I think that's just gotten harder over time for them, for sure.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt. I think a lot of, and I hate to bring this into the conversation, but let's face it, it is a fact. And the reality is that I don't think a lot of people want to get involved because of all of the nonsense they're going to have to put up with. That's, I see as a big problem because, again, 800 years ago when I was involved with it, yeah, you had your problems, maybe a little bit here, a little bit there, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. So I think a lot of people are hesitant to get involved because they don't want to deal with the nonsense.
Yeah, there's that. And the other thing that you and I, Jimmy, we talked about a little bit, I think the effect that travel baseball has had on Little League baseball,
Yeah.
right? And so the parents, they have certain expectations or thoughts on, you know, prioritizing maybe travel ball over Little League ball and what they think their child is going to end up doing. So, there's certainly added pressure in that regard in regards to the parents' expectations of what they think they're going to get out of these programs. So yeah, I agree with you. That has become a little bit more challenging over the years for sure. Um, but at the end of the day, as I've said to you before, I hope, I really do hope that Little League baseball sticks around, and as long as we have the Little League World Series, the kids who truly love the game and want to play every single day, along with the kids that just want to play, as long as that Little League World Series is there for towns to aspire to climbing that ladder and winning districts and getting to states and winning states and moving on for the chance to represent their town in the Little League. As long as that's intact, as long as that's in place, I think Little League will be okay.
Yeah. And I've often talked about that exact thing where, you take a travel organization, they go to ABC tournament and they go and win. And I've even had this conversation with like my high school players about this is if you win that tournament, what'd you win?
Right.
And they're like, oh, we won the tournament, coach. I said, yeah, but that's great. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad, but does it mean anything?
Yeah.
And they're like, no. And I would say to them, well, does it mean anything if we win a sectional title as a high school team? Well, yeah, sure, that means something. What about a regional? What about a state? And Little League's the same way, like you said, to win those districts and states and then move on. It means something. You're playing for your town. There's a certain amount of pride that's involved with that. Rather than going to some tournament, and let's face it, you don't know what the competition is. You have no idea. So, yeah, you may walk out of there with your chest out that we just won this tournament. Meanwhile, you beat up on a bunch of teams that had two pitchers,
Right.
So I think that there is a possibility, maybe, eventually, where maybe parents will get sick and tired of paying $10,000 a year for their kid to play meaningless baseball, and they'll start coming back to community baseball.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's hard to say for sure. I think like I said in my book, when my sons were just getting involved with Little League, the travel organizations, they were few and far between. There really weren't many of them at all. And by the time I had four sons go through Little League, those travel organizations are absolutely everywhere. And listen, I'll raise my hand and say, there's no question that I got involved, with travel. And it's funny, if you had asked me before I got started, like, you want me to drive my son a half hour away to some indoor, you're out of your mind. Well, I ended up doing that. The Grind up in Orange, Connecticut, who, Mike Morris is a wonderful guy and it's a great organization. And I did that. And, you scratch your head, but again, you want to do right by your child and try to get them to improve. But some parents take it a little too far. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I mean, I can tell you because right now this winter has been a really big eye opener for me because I got involved with a local Little League because I figured I had to put my money where my mouth was, and I signed up to be on their board as their coaching coordinator. So in order to do this, I'm working with their lowest level 6 and 7-year-olds and the coaches to get the boys acclimated, to start training them, to start teaching them the fundamentals. So I'm working with the 6 and 7-year-olds. Then I have my development organization, which is kids 11 through 14. And then I have my college team, which are kids 17, 18, 19. Okay? I'm teaching all of them the same thing.
Right.
All of them. Okay?
Yeah.
Which blows my mind.
Yeah.
How can a college player, and again, let's face it, most of those kids that are on that team, I won't even say most of them, all of them, play travel baseball. What did they learn while they were playing travel baseball? Nothing.
Yeah.
So, I never understood. I shouldn't say that because years ago, like you said, when there were few travel teams, those guys that were running those travel teams knew what they were doing. And there's still guys now that run travel organizations that are very good and they know what they're doing. There's no doubt about that. The majority of them don't. They don't even know the first thing about teaching baseball to players. and it's
Yeah.
hurting the kids. Whereas you can take all of those travel teams and take all of those coaches and put them into the Fairfield American Little League, okay? Train those coaches, right? And make it a better developmental experience
Right.
for the boys instead of
Yeah.
not practicing, going out and playing these 5 games in a weekend. You're destroying arms, you're killing everybody.
Yeah. 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 That's a big part of it too, right? You're playing, and again, it's easier said than done. And in looking back, if you have a child like my son's being involved with summer district play or tournament team play, it's if all the other kids are doing it and the teams ahead of you and what I mean by that is they're involved with travel programs. Well, if you want to get better and you want to try to make the team, I get it. There's that pressure, and you have to stick with it. So it's a balancing act, and to the point about ruining arms, I feel for the parents. None of my boys were true pitchers, but managing those pitch counts between Little League and travel ball, as you and I had discussed earlier, it's really, really hard, because you're relying as a Little League coach of that child's parents to communicate with you saying, okay, listen, he's going to pitch tonight in this game for a Little League game. And, it's a big game towards the end of the season, and we're going to go the max. We're going to throw him 75, 85 pitches, whatever it may be for the age. Um, when's his next travel game? Is it tonight? Is it the next night? Kind of a thing. So, and there were some parents who just turned a blind eye, and said, "Oh, don't worry about it," and the kid doesn't know any better and does it anyway. So I can't speak to where that stands today, but I have to tell you, not too long ago, it was a problem. It was a problem. We did our best as an organization to, basically log those pitch counts, which, for many reasons, to protect the child's health, for sure, his arm, but also to be fair, with the other teams in the division as well, to making sure that, nobody is abusing the pitch counts.
Yeah, I mean, the pitch counts are pitch smart as a guideline. I've seen it abused. I've seen it abused like crazy, which has prompted Major League Baseball. As a matter of fact, when I was at the Youth Summit in November, Major League Baseball was talking to us about they're coming out, and as a matter of fact, it should be out soon, Pitch Smart 2.0, because there are flaws with it, such as, which I've seen, let's say pitcher's max is 90 pitches. Well, they'll put a kid out on the mound and he'll throw 90 pitches in 2 innings, okay? And I've heard people defend it. What are you talking about? That's within the limits. And it's like, well, that's kind of like twisting the way that was. That,
Right.
that 90 pitches is over 6 or 7 innings, whatever age the kid is. You can't throw a kid 90 pitches. There's no way in hell in 2 innings. You're destroying his arm.
Yeah. Yeah. And think about it. You know what? Nobody really talks about the catcher. Let's say you've got a great catcher and he's behind that backstop, behind the plate 6 innings straight, in a big, and then he's got a travel game too. Well, he's throwing an awful lot too. Maybe not as hard, but still,
Yeah.
and then you factor in you're practicing every day, and the kids love it. I get all of that, but it is something that, kind of depending on the parents involved and the travel organizations involved, people can tend to look the other way. And before you know it, you've got growth plate issues, you've got borderline Tommy John issues. And like I said, I don't know where it stands today, but I can't imagine it's gotten much better.
No, it's getting worse.
Yeah.
And I want everybody out there to hear what I'm going to say is that I have a former player, to Matt's point. Okay, he's a college catcher. He's a freshman. He's actually rehabbing right now from Tommy John surgery. Never threw a pitch on the mound in his life, probably.
Right.
Okay, he's a catcher. There you go.
Yep.
To your point.
Yep.
So
Yeah. So, again, it's and those travel ages, the organizations are, signing kids signing kids, they're basically taking kids at a much, much younger age.
Oh yeah.
So those arms are only going to get that much more work and that much more tired.
Yeah, what I get a kick out of it, and I think you and I, the other day when we spoke, we talked about it a little bit. I mean, they have tournaments for 6-year-olds.
That I can't even understand what that means.
Right?
Yeah, I don't, when you think about that, that really makes me laugh because part of the book, I go over the division of double A in Little League, which is the first time, it should be, the first time they're on the mound pitching. And guess what? The pitchers can't pitch, the catchers can't catch. The ball goes behind the catcher picks up the ball, throws it over the pitcher. The shortstop is picking his nose, and the ball rolls out into the outfield. I mean, and we're talking about 6-year-olds in tournaments. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, bad enough that we have tournaments and travel teams that are under 12 years old, which I don't believe they should be. I know that ship has sailed and we cannot fix it. We can't put that genie back in the bottle. But there is no way in hell you could justify, to me, anybody under 13 playing in tournaments. There's no purpose. There's none whatsoever.
Yeah.
So
one of the best things that Fairfield American Little League did, summer tournament and district. So in Fairfield, if back in the day, if you didn't make the district team, we had multiple tournament teams, like an A, B, C, whatever kind of a thing, and that went on for quite a while. And then by about 2011, or I guess that was the year, we did right by the kids who basically, maybe love the game, but we're not at that level, right? They weren't at a tournament. So we created a house league, a summer house league,
Great.
which was just an extension of the spring season. And I got to tell you, for my oldest son, my two older sons who were involved, it was some of the fondest memories of my life. Just basically playing Little League baseball in the summertime at night, sometimes under the lights. And sure, we had a little bit of a playoff tournament towards the end of July. And I was really happy to see the league do that. And that was just 11 and 12-year-olds. And it was so successful, we brought it down to the 9 and 10-year-olds. And, we built on it. Fairfield National across town, they started shipping kids over because they didn't have it in place. And then we started pulling from other towns like Easton, Connecticut and others. And it's changed a lot since, but it's such a wonderful thing just because for those kids who just like playing, it's okay if you miss a practice or two, right? The Summer House League was perfect for them.
yeah, yeah, and I bet the kids had a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
And that's what it has to be about. I mean, I have a good friend, Matt Cole, Bethlehem Little League in Virginia, and he explains to me because his league is actually going the opposite of other leagues, where his league is growing. He's getting more and more players every single year, and I'm curious, how'd you do that? And he said, Jim, we make it fun. We make it a like a carnival type atmosphere. Music playing, food trucks there.
That's great.
So it's like, whatever, going out on a Friday night to have fun with your whole family. It's a family thing. And, I think we've gotten away from that. People, too involved in competition. I love that. At 11, 10, 9, heard somebody say it the other day, that the 50-70 field, when they start playing on that, well, that's real baseball. I'm like, real baseball? I mean, come on, everything you were saying before, the kids can't throw to each other, this and that.
Yeah.
It's not real baseball. It might be, you might have the rules of real baseball.
Right.
But
still not the full size either, but, getting there.
Yeah, make it fun. Teach the kids, how about you teach a kid how to run the bases, so that when I get them in high school and college, that I don't have to teach that to them.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, some of my fondest memories of my involvement with the league was Memorial Day. We basically called it, we different names, but basically, like a challenger day, where basically your teams ahead of Memorial Day will vote for, your top kids. And this is with the 9s, the 10s, 11s, and 12s where like who are your best base runners, who are your best bunters, who are your sluggers, and so we would have different competitions on
Love it.
Memorial Day
Love it.
for the different age groups, and the parents, they would just lean in, hang over the fences, sit up on the hill, hopefully, knock on wood, a beautiful Memorial Day. You go to the parade in the morning, and then everybody ran over to the field afterwards, and we as coaches were there all day. We do all of these challenges, which are just wonderful. And then the AAA kids, the 10, 11-year-old kids who are the sluggers, we'll do a kind of a mini home run derby for them. And then we'll do that for the majors kids. And then we run an all-star game for the AAA and it goes until dusk. And the parents love it. There's concession stands there, and kids just have, and that about our prime jewel of a field, Mill Hill, which is Mill Hill Elementary School, but behind the school down is where our majors field was, and that's where the concession stand is, and that's where we ran Memorial Day. And I talk about in the book, especially with those boys from the 2010 World Series team. When I asked them, I interviewed all of them. The coaches' sons, like three of them. They're all, grown now and they live in the city. And I got them on a Zoom call and we talked about the success of the team. I said, okay, guys, that aside for a second, tell me about some of the things you just remember loving. And for them, one of the men, I was about to say boys, they're men now, of course, right? One of the guys said he just remembered hanging out at Mill Hill all day long, you know, and their parents, his parents knew where he was, safe place, hanging out with boys and girls playing Little League baseball.
Yeah.
And those are some of his fondest memories.
Yeah. And I mean, people need to understand what you just said is that, these kids are not going to remember some game, in July sometime that they lost, what the score was, how many hits they're not going to remember that, but they're going to remember the friends they made. They're going to remember that coach, okay, that actually cared about him. They're going to remember that. That's why I mean all of this other stuff is a complete waste of time for all of this travel stuff because, again, there's like 16 million kids involved in youth sports, okay?
Right.
I forget what the number is with baseball. It's like 6 million, 7 million. Well, let me put it this way. There is no higher participation in youth sports than baseball, okay? If you look it up, basketball will say it's number one, but that's because they combine the boys and the girls. Baseball does not combine baseball and softball. So there's like 6, 7, maybe 8 million kids that play it. Only 500,000 play high school baseball.
Yeah.
So that right there tells you that, all of this stuff is just a waste of time, a waste of money. It's just a waste of everything other than the people that are making tons and tons of money off of this. Okay. And whereas if guys came back to Fairfield American Little League and if the numbers went back up to 800-900 kids in the league, okay, they could have fun. I'm sure that you trained your coaches to some degree.
Some degree, yeah, as best we can.
Yeah, train the coaches so this way the coaches can teach the fundamentals. Again, you don't have to teach them high-level baseball, but teach them how to bunt. Simple things.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, teaching the basics. We would run winter clinics indoor, of course, especially we would encourage greatly the newer coaches, the ones that are just like I was in day one, just want to get involved, but not sure exactly what to do on day one, kind of a thing. So to your point, what kind of drills do you do in T-ball? And then what kind of drills do you do in the higher levels? And then also what you said, what can you sprinkle in just to have fun towards the end of a practice to keep these kids engaged, know? So there's a lot of that too, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we were just with the 6 and 7-year-olds the other day, and we were getting down towards the end of practice, and one of the youth coaches said to me, "Okay, what do you want to do next?" We had just finished doing some hitting instruction, and I said, "You know what?" I said, "Take him into the other cage over there." I said, "Play tag with him." So he said,
Right.
He goes, I said, "Believe me, go in there and play tag with him." It was like 10 minutes, Go in there and play tag because they're going to enjoy it. They're going to run around. They're going to have fun. Let's
Let
do
kids be
Let
kids.
kids be
Exactly
kids.
right.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah,
Instead,
you have to. It can get ridiculously hard for frankly no good reason. But everyone gets swept up into the moment of the big game and the close score and those can be all well. Sometimes it gets a little out of hand for sure. But to your point, it's the reminder of try to keep it simple, try to keep it fun, keep them smiling because you want them to obviously come back and keep playing for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. So what what can you give people out there to understand what a little league president is faced with? What are his roles? What does he have to do?
Right, right. Yeah, it's funny. It's you know, part of why I was able to write the book was I have this, like all of us do, my personal email inbox is a Yahoo inbox. And I still have to this day, every once in a while, top left corner of the screen, I go, oh my God, there's over 55,000 emails sitting in my inbox. And a lot of it's junk, whatever. But for the most part, it's a lot of little league emails that I just, you get overwhelmed and they just sit there. So when writing the book, I could literally punch in a year and just get this rewind of everything that went on. And believe me, some of it is you laugh out loud, and some of it's like, how did I survive that and everything else that went on? But as president of a league, I got to say it was a little, not terrifying, but a little scary when you're handed this big book of rules from the president who's retiring. He's got a smile on his face as he hands it to you, like, good luck, buddy. That kind of a thing. But you're hopefully surrounded by other board members who you trust and have some knowledge themselves, which is what happened for me for sure. But it's not easy. It's really not easy because as I allude to in the book as well, we all have day jobs, and being a board member, let alone a president of a league, is a volunteer position, right? So what are you really dealing with? You're dealing with coaches that think they deserve X, Y, and Z. Why did he get that manager position? I should have gotten that manager position. You have parents who have many, many concerns. And obviously, you want to do right by them for sure. Some of them are legit concerns, some of them not so much. And then it becomes a balancing act of, how do you handle that kind of a thing? So the day job comment that I made is really where I wanted to focus. It's kind of like, if I had a morning full of meetings at my day job, by lunch, I'm starting to realize in the back of my brain, oh my God, if I don't get to that inbox, forget it. And there are days where I'll open it and it's moving, because there's a topic that either coaches of a certain level and that commissioner or the board is talking about a topic and people are just firing in from every side. And sometimes as president, you realize the best thing you can do is just let it happen and then jump in at the end, and share your 2 cents kind of a thing. But you can't help yourself early on when you see somebody say something that is so far off the mark. And if you don't put that out, that mini fire, it's going to be a blaze within a matter of minutes. So it can be really challenging for sure when you're dealing with so many different things at the same time. And there are many, many things. There are many, many things.
Well, from the time that you became president to the time that you left, did you see the league or those type of things increase where there were more issues that you had to deal with?
You know what? I think it was probably the same because you can't predict.
Yeah.
You can't predict, right? One of the things I shared with you prior to this call was, getting invited. A friend of mine who was the president of girls softball in town asked me to join him at a Parks and Rec meeting in town because the girls softball league was getting squeezed in regards to field space, and the town wanted them to pay, or increase fees and all of these things to get more field space. And so I went in and, to back up my friend, who's the president of girls softball, and share my 2 cents. But at the end of that meeting, two women on the board were talking about the fields in town and who truly has access. And one woman says to another, "It's like, no, 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 you have to live here if you want to play here." And Jimmy, I kid you not, I wish I hadn't been at the meeting because I rose my hand and I said, "That's not actually true." And she said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, Little League International rules are if you go to school here, you can play here." Well, the town of Fairfield wasn't going to have it because they had so many issues with fields and people coming in and playing men's softball and all these other things, and they were trying to control it. So they started to play a little tough with us, and they asked us to come back and open up our books about how many kids were actually playing in our league that didn't actually live here. We're talking about a dozen kids maybe in a given year that are playing t-ball, and they go to some, Catholic school in town, but live in a town outside of town, kind of a thing. I'm sharing this story with you because that blew up into this mega thing over a course of a couple weeks, and it was just unexpected as president, right? It came out of the blue. Kind of did it to myself by helping out a friend, kind of a thing, right? But that's my point. Like it was completely out of left field, and that's just one example of many things that happen. Here's one more, real quick. Little League International decides one year that they're going to change the bats, right? They're going to actually change from the days of the omens, right, and those real, power bats, if you will, to more of the USA bat, right, which is it's getting a little deadened. It's more wood-like, right? So we realized as a league that that news was coming out in the fall, right? That for the next year they were going to switch. So we felt as an organization, how can we not notify our families around Christmas when these parents are going to go out and spend $300 or $400 on an Omen or one of these other bats and tell them, don't buy it. We have to wait now. And we know what we did. It was the best thing we could have done. We decided to go to wood. We went to wood bats until the rule completely changed, which wasn't until later that year, and we used wood, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, we
Yeah.
broke a lot of bats, but we saved the parents a lot of money. So I'm telling you that because, again, another example of all of a sudden Little League International share something with you, and you gotta move, you gotta change, you gotta do something different.
Yeah. Well, I love the way you adapted. I mean, that was a good, good thing. And then obviously also having having the advance notice to the parents so that, if they did decide to buy the bat for Christmas, because again, we don't want them wasting any more money than they're wasting now. But
Right.
um,
Exactly.
so yeah, I mean, all of that stuff is really important. Again, it just goes to show people that as a league president, that seems like a minor thing. They changed the bat. What's the big deal? Well, if you're
A
not
lot of
on your
communication. Yeah, there's a lot to go with it for
yeah,
sure.
if you're not on your toes, then something like that is going to come back to bite you real hard.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the things that I want to hear from you is what is something that parents misunderstand about development of players from 9 to 12?
Misunderstand. Um, I don't know if, I mean, it depends on the parent, right? I mean, you have parents that um, really don't know anything about baseball, about Little League, and they expect, the coaches of a league to, help their child to develop, and that's a pretty good situation, right? Where there's a mutual respect for each other. That listen, parents says they don't really know that much about it. They want their child to have fun and learn, and then you have parents who, especially dads, at least through my experience more than moms, who think they know best, but aren't involved. Yeah. So that can be, and again, I don't know how much that really evolves and improves over time. But I think that can be extremely challenging, especially when you're talking about a parent whose child is a good player and then advances to a district or tournament team. and they have a lot to say about it, you know. And so for us as a league, whether they show up in our monthly meetings, or they send emails about it, 9 times out of 10, what we do as a board is we push back and say, you know what? That's a wonderful idea. You should get involved. You should come to more meetings. You should talk about it more. If you're that passionate about it, you know, instead of the two sides being combative about it, say, listen, those monthly meetings are open to the public. Anybody can come in and share their ideas. Many times parents will come in, share an idea, we never hear from them again.
Yeah.
But the ones that are repetitive, you know, I have no problem pulling them aside and being like, listen, this is a good idea. You know, please, you know, get more involved. You
Yeah.
know, if you would like to see that develop for that division, you know, become a coach, become a manager, become a commissioner, you know, become a board member
Right.
to try to improve things.
Right. Yeah. What I was I was trying to force you in a certain direction with that question, because what I believe that parents don't understand at the younger ages, and even, you know, older than 12, is that practice needs to be much, much more than the games that are played. So,
Yeah.
you know, case in point, my development league, we practice 3 times a week. We will play maybe one game on a weekend. And if we don't have a game, we'll practice on the weekend. So there are times when we'll have, I don't know, 7 practices before we even play a game. Okay.
Right.
Because that's the way players develop.
Sure.
And that's something that I wish parents would understand, but it's so hard to make them understand that you do not develop during a game. Yeah, you develop certain things during a game, but you need to be coached on how to play that game before you go out and play that game.
Right.
And it's that simple.
Yeah, yeah. I think for us as an organization, I think the challenge there, and maybe not so much, maybe not as much as it used to be, because again, there are less children playing. But back in the day when I was involved, field space was an issue. You know, you wanted as many practices as you possibly can. Of course, playing Little League baseball here in Connecticut, New England, you know, you're waiting for the weather to change, and Lord knows what we're dealing with nowadays. You know, good luck this spring, right? But
Yeah.
you know, so we try our best as an organization to get gym space, you know, to do some things indoors. There are travel organizations that have some indoor facilities that we can also rent that space to use for our little league, and we'll do that. But when it comes to when it came to the outdoor practices, it became very challenging. So part of the answer to your question, you know, it's hard as an organization when you're limited to the number of fields you have to divvy it all up among all the divisions that you have.
But, okay, and again, this is from experience.
Yeah,
You don't need a baseball field. You could take
true.
probably at the Little League level, you could probably take 4 teams and have them practice on a soccer field or a football field, any patch of grass. You don't need,
Yeah,
you know, basically, yes, you do have to spend time on the field. Of course you do. There's certain things that can only be done on the field. But if you're a little bit creative, and again, case in point, when I was at Lord's High School, we didn't have a baseball field. So we had a beautiful turf football field, all-purpose field,
right.
and I ran all my practices on that football field with a high school team. And you can do it. There's a lot of stuff that you could do.
Yeah,
So I think that, you know, a lot of it has to do with, again, educating coaches, educating parents, you know, giving them those type of ideas that, hey, you know, grab a couple throw down bases. Come on, I'll show you a bunch of drills you can do over on that piece of grass over there, you know,
yeah,
and that type of thing. So,
that's true.
yeah, so I think that, you know, we need to get youth baseball to understand that it's about the practice, it's about the development, and where the development takes place, meaning that it's not during a game.
Right. No, I 100% agree with that. I mean, and the more practice, the better. And frankly, you know, practice can be a lot of fun as well for these kids. You know, the way you mix it up, especially with those, you know, that's the toughest part, right? I think when the kids are, you know, going from t-ball and what we call the Cappy division, where you have, coach pitch and kids are learning to swing for the first time. You know, boys who love the game at that age, eh, first of all, none of those kids are hitting the ball to the outfield, right? They're not strong enough.
That's right.
So what do you have? You have an entire team in the infield.
Yeah.
And then when the ball dribbles, towards the pitcher's mound or towards third or towards, you've got a herd of cats, running towards the ball as well. That can get pretty old pretty fast for these kids. So learning how to make it fun and do some running bases and things that you can and, practice before the game, even though it's truly not a game, or maybe stopping midway and doing something else like running bases. Because, it's hard to keep them engaged. And, I think one of the biggest struggles we have in losing kids, and this is probably the case in many organizations, and I'm sure you've seen this, is by the time they are 9, 10, and maybe they're a little burnt out because nothing's really happening for them baseball wise, when really they're so close to turning the corner, right? Because at that age, they're starting to pitch, they're starting to hit, the fielding comes together. If they just hold on a little bit longer, it really gets good. But around that age, 9, 10, we start losing kids to the lacrosse.
Yes.
And soccer is always there, but lacrosse really exploded in Fairfield because there's constant movement, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a challenge too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it really is. There's a myriad of reasons, why community baseball, is losing players, but the kids are still playing. Okay, so in other words, the numbers are not going down. I believe the numbers are still going up, the amount of people that are playing. It's just they're just not playing in community-based baseball.
Right.
And something that I never understood is that, well, I shouldn't say that because I do understand it. Anything under 13, if you're coaching a team, why would you not do that in your local Little League? Why wouldn't you coach that team in your local Little League? The answer is because whoever that coach is saying to himself, you know what? If I take these 12 kids and I go play in tournaments, I can make myself an extra 10 grand this year.
Right. Right.
Instead of saying, you know what? What's best for these kids? Because if you think about it, if you took, all of the travel organizations that are in your area that have, what league, what age does Fairfield start at? 5 or 4?
Yes.
5.
Today it might be even 4, but 5 is what I recall.
Okay, so let's say 5. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay,
Yep.
There's got to be a ton of teams in your area that are travel teams at those ages. Well, if they all came and they played, for that league, then your league would be that much bigger. Okay, it wouldn't cost the parents a fortune to go play, wherever the hell they're playing with these kids. Hotels and meals and gas.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous.
How about flights? You're right.
Right.
Even for these kids at that age, I'm starting to hear that, some of these tournaments people are flying to. I'm like, oh my Lord, it's a little insane.
That's
a little
crazy.
insane. For sure.
So one of my big things with baseball, and I tell this to my players all the time, is that, our main goal as coaches is not necessarily baseball, although, don't get me wrong, it is baseball, but the majority of what I'm trying to do as a coach is teach you life lessons. So what life lessons do you believe that Little League teaches better than any other level of baseball?
It's a few things. Team spirit, confidence, respecting one another as a team. We would say many, many times, respect each other, respect this field, respect the umpires, respect for the game. And most of the boys got that. Most of the boys understood that. It's up to the coaches to make sure that that message, gets across, not once, not twice, but an entire season. So I think for me, those life lessons and listen, some of those life lessons are, you know, the thrill of the win, the agony of defeat, right? Those are all important lessons, Some of these boys who, maybe they're not so great on the mound, maybe they are. It doesn't matter. If they give up the big hit and they lose the game, it hurts the same, and it's truly a life lesson. And that's why the game is so great. It's the ups and downs, it's all of that. But like a lot of sports, teaching someone how to do something the right way, respecting each other while doing it, and having a hell of a time doing it, having fun. Basically, it can be the joy of someone's life like it was for me,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I love that answer. I mean, that's spot on. So why don't you tell everybody where they can get a copy of your book if they want to read it?
Yeah, sure. So it's available on Amazon. And if you just look up Fairfield American and Matt McGuire or one or the other, the book will pop up. I did the book more for my sons than anything else. I wanted it to be a keepsake, and it has turned into an absolute joy to share not only with friends and family, but the members of this community. And now I'm hearing from people outside the community as well who have absolutely enjoyed it. And on April 13th, I'm going to do an author talk at the Fairfield Public Library. April 16th, I'm sorry, April 16th, which is a Thursday night. I'll have some information on that I can send out. But it's available on Amazon. You can get the printed edition or you can get the ebook.
That's fantastic. Well, I got to tell you, Matt, I want to thank you for reaching out. I thought this was a great conversation. I know that there are a lot of things there that people can learn from. And, I wish you nothing but the best with that book.
Well, Jimmy, thank you so much. I knew I was doing something right when I found out that you and I had a connection to Archbishop Stepanak High School. I'm glad you coached there. I'm glad I played there. And that was also the joy of my life, too. So thank you so much for the time.
No, thank you. And, yes, the baseball community always seems to be a small world where, everybody knows everybody. So, or has some type of connection one way or another. So thanks, Matt. I hope you didn't get killed with the snow too much. And, we'll stay in touch.
Thank you, Jimmy. Appreciate it.
Take care. Wow, does that feel good to get back behind the microphone and have conversations again? And, I apologize for being away for so long, but like I said in the beginning of the show, there's a lot of things going on right now, a lot of moving parts, and, and sometimes, like I said, life gets in the way. So as you can tell from this conversation with Matt, the book is filled with stories and anecdotes of what happened during his 15-year career in Little League Baseball. Now, that's a long time. I mean, a lot of people, will stay in it for, 4 or 5 years, 6 years maybe, but 15 years is a long time, so there's a lot to swallow. There's a lot to digest there in the book. And again, the book is called Fairfield American, A Legacy of Little League Dreams. Go out, look it up on Amazon, give it a read. I mean, it'll give you a good snapshot into what goes on in Little League Baseball. The ups, the downs, the good, the bad, the ugly. You all know what happens out there. So I enjoyed the conversation with Matt. We're hitting the ground running, and like I had mentioned before, we do have a new podcast coming out. Some of you may have seen the advertisement for it. It should be out soon. It's a collaboration with Walter Beatty and myself, and I really think that that's going to be another show that people will be able to listen to, again, to get more insight, to get more perspective into what's going on in the youth baseball world. Walter is a great resource for college recruiting. He knows the ins and outs of college baseball. He's just a very, very smart guy, very knowledgeable in all aspects of baseball, and it might be a good idea once it's released to maybe check that out and, look at it this way. It'll give you, another resource that you can listen to while you're driving to work, while you're mowing the lawn. Nowadays it could be while you're shoveling the damn snow. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Matt, for coming on. And like Matt had mentioned, we both have a connection to Stepanak High School, which it just amazes me how big the baseball world is, but also how small it can be. So, if you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Visit the website at thectbshow.net. Listen to your favorite episodes and please leave us a review. You can also reach out to the show on social media, X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, And get this, the old man has finally got us on TikTok. Keeps me young. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover, please drop us an email at clearingthebases@gmail.com. Your feedback helps us bring you the best content and reach more people in the baseball community just like you. And also, let me know if you'd like to be a guest. Until then, coaches and players, keep practicing, stay positive, and remember, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Thanks, everyone, and I'll see you on the next one.